Hi everyone. This is my very first time to be live on my channel, so bear with us. We apologize for the lateness. Like I said, it's my first time, so we were trying to adjust some things at the back. But with us today, we have someone who is great, awesome. He's been amazing to me. So we're going to give him some time to introduce himself. But before that, as you all know, I am Jermaine Kwene. I am an agile coach, and my goal is to work effectively with teams and ensure that they are equipped with everything they need for them to succeed. So, without taking so much time, and please use the comment section if you have any question, if there's anything going on, maybe we are echoing or whatever it is that you notice, please use the comment section to address that, and we'll do our due diligence to adjust. Thank you so very much, and I'll hand it over to Dr. Francis.
Hello everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. For some reason I'm echoing, but I just want to double check. Use the comment box to see if let us hear if we can hear any echo or not. So that we know that we get it correctly. I think Coach Jermaine cannot hear any echo and but want to see if our viewer is getting any echo. All right, without wasting much time, my name is Francis Bonya. I'm based in Dallas, Texas, and I love Agile, and this is why we're here to talk about it today. And today we're going to be talking about planning and some of the questions which we're going to be bringing up today. More or less, I have a business background, and I've been in this space for I would say since 2012. My doctorate was more on a concept called Bridge Life, which is very close to us, which is one of the reasons why being agile, it's what I want to talk about all day. And super excited to be here with top coach Jermaine to share our thought with you. So let's dive into the discussion. The goal for I think the goal for us is to be able to get feedback from you and to look at how we can better support you in the conversation. Thank you very much. Great back to you.
Thank you so very much. Just from the way you spoke, your introduction looks more like, the passion is really there. So it's really um nothing, that we're trying to fake. So it's inborn. So thank you so very much for that introduction. Um okay, I feel like there is a few things that we need to adjust here.
Okay.
We need to send a link, I believe. Is there a way you do that from your end?
Yeah, just go ahead. I'm gonna sort that out.
Okay. Thank you so very much. So, Agile is something we breathe every day. Agile is part of our lives. And I always use a very simple example to address what agility is all about. Because some people say that, oh, they have never done Agile before, but they fail to realize that they actually practice it every day of their life.
That's right.
One very simple example I use is, how many clothes do you have in your life? Like your wardrobe, how many clothes do you have? When I ask that question and people will say, okay, I have a couple of these, that, I say, okay, why are you dressed the way you're dressed right now? Like, why don't you wear all of the clothes you have in this world on your body right now? And they say, well, that will make me stuffy. It's not going to be conducive. The environment, first of all, people will look me like I'm stupid and all this and all that. Then now I brought in this conclusion that, okay, now you realize that you're doing Agile because you're taking smaller things in, like something that is really conducive at this point.
Yeah.
The environment, if you're going for a party, for instance, there's a specific way you're going to dress. You're not going to carry all the clothes in this world to put on. If you're feeling cold, there's a specific way you're going to dress. So agility is all about, you getting that satisfaction at every instance, the environment, the event, and, what you have. So in other words, we are all doing Agile. Even when you eat, why don't you shove all the food in your mouth? Why do you take a couple of bites? That is agility. So whether you like it or not, we are all doing Agile or we are practicing Agile, but we don't just know that we are doing it. And with some people, it goes a longer way because they really get to dive into other things. They try to help people as much as possible when they really need that help. That is agility. Okay. Without going into so much details of what I always ask people when we connect during coaching sessions, just for them to understand that yes, this is something that you do. So it's not a matter of, okay, can I do it or can I not do it? You're already doing it, but you don't just understand that you're doing it. So today we're actually going to be talking about PI planning and what is PI planning in the first place and why do organizations do PI? With PI planning, it is a 2 days event. And in this event, the expectation or the goal is for the teams belonging to the different acts, that's Agile, Release, Train, to be able to plan their work based on the cadence that the organization picks. Because I've worked in different organizations that they pick, different cadence, could be 6 sprints, 12 sprints, depending on the number of sprints that they intend to plan their work for. So they abide by that. The goal is for them to plan their work. That way, there is no, they understand that, okay, when it comes to dependency, we can mitigate this. So again, it's a 2 days event where sometimes, it's actually, now that we are in this pandemic, it was on site initially, but now it's kind of a mix depending on how many people are willing to fly and, how conducive it is for people. But I have actually attended an on-site section and an online section. So the 2 days event is for the team to plan their work. So, Mr. Francis.
All right. So that's why
That's
we
why
did.
we
I
did.
think
I
we're
think
only
we're
live
only live
on
on
YouTube,
YouTube,
but I've
but I've
shared on
shared on
LinkedIn and
LinkedIn
on
and on
Facebook, and I
Facebook, and
tag
I
you.
tag
So
you. So
anyone watching
anyone
on
watching
be
on
able to
be
get
able
that.
to get that.
Now let's
Now
let's
let's
go
Okay,
in
thank
ahead
you.
and talk about
about
PI planning.
PI planning.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
It's one of
It's
those
one of those
events that
events that
throws a lot of
throws a
people,
lot of people,
and which is
and which is
important that we talk
important
about.
that we talk about.
And
And
also
also
because
because
companies that
companies that
are
are
not yet
not yet
practicing
practicing
PI
PI
planning,
planning,
they are
they are
zooming into
zooming
it
into it
because when
because
their
when their
team
team
become larger,
larger,
they need a
they
better
need a
way
better
to
way
like
to. Like,
I quite
I
remember
quite
I had a
remember I had a
conversation with
conversation with
one of the
one of the
CEOs of
CEOs of
one of these
one
big
of these big
companies. I said,
companies. I
look,
said, look,
we're
we're
struggling with
struggling with
getting
getting
our team
our team
organized,
organized,
and we
and we
want to
want to
adapt
adapt.
stage. But a lot
A
of
lot
people
of
like the
people like the
traditional
traditional
agile.
agile.
What is my
What is
thought
my
about
thought
it?
about that?
I think the
I
same
think the
question
same
you're
question you're
asking me.
asking
What's
me,
my
what's
thought
my
about
thought about it?
PI
Yes.
planning and the like?
And the like.
All right, I
All right,
said
I said
it's more
more
like
like
you have a
Okay,
shop.
Loretta says that Dr. Francis is echoing.
Okay, perfect.
Am I
Uh,
echoing as well, Loretta? Or is it just Dr. Francis?
so if I'm
if I'm
echoing, then
ignorant,
there's
then there's
definitely
definitely
something we need
something
to
we
do.
need to do.
Oh, let me mute.
Okay,
Go ahead while I mute.
can you see hear the echo? I guess it should be much better now, right? I cannot hear any echo. Can you hear me, Coach?
Yes, I can hear you. So it seems like I have to mute myself while you talk.
Let me
I
see.
think that's better that way.
No, I think the echo it's somehow gone. Even when you unmute yourself, I don't know what was causing the echo, but
Okay,
I guess
Loretta says it's better now. Say we are
okay.
good. Okay.
All right, perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, you
Okay,
need to
you
mute
need to meet
yourself, I
yourself,
guess.
I guess.
Okay.
All right. Okay, it's better now when you mute yourself. I can hear the echo. So probably when you talk, I need to mute. Now we figure out the problem. Right? That's agile. We look at what's going on, we take a minute and we
And
fix
we
it.
fix it.
Exactly.
All right, so we're talking about PI planning and the safe environment. And someone asked me, a lot of people don't like it because they think it's very complicated. And I said, okay, that let's take for instance, you have a business, and your business is to, let's say, you supply food every morning to an office, right? So what you need to do, drive to that office, make sure that you get the food delivered, and then you're done for the day, right? Versus you need to supply that food to about 50 different locations in one day. You're doing the same thing, but you're not gonna need the same system, right? So SAFE is not a complicated environment. It's a system that is built to deliver in a more complex environment. But then a lot of people kind of made a mistake to think SAFE is something really different from Scrum. But it's not different from Scrum. It's just like you need to supply to one customer versus you need to supply to 50 customer. The same period, the same day. Now you agree with me that the mechanism you're going to put in place to supply to 50 customer is not going to be the same. But what are you doing? Supplying. So our goal, whether we're practicing safe, whether we're practicing Scrum, whether we're practicing Kanban, less extreme programming, is that we want to deliver a valuable quality end product to our client. And safe just give us that environment that help us to work with multiple people, just like you are supplying to 50 customer in a day. So there need to be a level of organization that help us to have more transparency and help us to collaborate. And that is why PI or PI planning is a heartbeat of safe. So PI planning is that platform that's going to help us to do that same thing for 50 people within the same interval that we can supply to one person. So it's an interesting journey, and definitely talking about it today, I guess there's so much that we can share and
Share
learn.
and
So I'm
learn. So
going
I'm
to
going to
throw it back
throw
to
it
you,
back
Coach
to you,
Damon.
Coach Damon. Okay. Thank you so very much, Dr. Francis. For the rest of you that are in the comment section, please ask your questions. As many as you have them, just post the questions here and we're going to be addressing them one after another one intervals. So, but make sure you are limiting it around safe or PI planning because that's the discussion for today. Unless we are done with this PI, then we can move to something else. But for now, please keep your comments or your question around PI. Thank you so very much. Okay, so yeah, Dr. Francis, you talked about Save and Scrum not really being different. With the only difference comes in, because Save is at the larger scale, while Scrum is smaller at a smaller scale, which is
Yeah.
which is 100% true. And even when you're practicing Save, you realize that most of those organizations that practice Save, they still do Scrum. Scrum is just at a smaller level, where the teams get to plan, but at the safe level, it involves several different teams planning at the same time.
Hmm.
So I really like the example you gave and the breakdown that you equally gave. So let's talk about preparation for safe. I mean, or preparation for PI. That's program increment. So PI is the same thing like program increment. We're planning for the program. We are planning at the program level. So what do you think the preparation entails for the various organization or for people practicing PI?
All right.
All right.
So
So
what does
what does
preparation
preparation
entail
entail
at
at
the level of
the level
PI?
of PI?
Because then if you
Because
can
then if
mute
you can
yourself
mute
so that
yourself
we
so
get
that
the
we get
good sound,
and
then that's gonna be good. All right, perfect. What does preparation entail? Now there are different levels of preparation. I don't want us to go by the book. I want us to go by an understanding. That's why we started by giving an example of you delivering to one person versus you delivering to 50 people within the same day. You're going to need different mechanism, right? Now, what does preparation entail? You realize that if you are delivering to one person, you don't so much need a lot of pre-preparation, right? You can just do maybe plan the previous day and you're good to go, which is what happened in a Scrum environment. Sprint planning is enough. But if you want to deliver to 50 people, maybe you cannot do that alone. You need to employ some managers that will be able to coordinate that delivery to happen side by side, right? Because you cannot be in 50 places at the same time. So, what are you going to do? You're going to plan with maybe your managers before your managers now coordinate with the people that are going to deliver it. So, in SAFE, PI planning, it's about how we plan to deliver. But when we are delivering, we're using Scrum, right? So the preparation is going to be, since you need to plan, you need to prepare the environment. Where are you going to do the planning? You spoke about PI in person and PI virtually. So if the organization need to be in person, now they need to start thinking about, if we have in breakout room or breakout areas, how are we going to set that up? The release train engineer is the person who facilitates it. Now, as a Scrum Master, you are part of the release train. So you might be able to coordinate with your release train engineer to understand how are we going to have breakout room session, because that's where your important role comes in as a Scrum Master, to be able to coordinate the effort of your team to contribute to the PI objective. All right, we're also going to look at readiness. When we talk about readiness, for you to get into planning where you're going to be collaborating with a lot of people, if you're not ready mentally, if you're not ready in terms of even understanding what the agenda is going to be, or having an idea of the futures your team is going to work on, you realize that it's going to be surprising when you get there. Now, when we talk about readiness in PI planning, we're looking at the business context. Are we ready? Do we understand exactly what we need to deliver? Now, we're also talking about the engineering processes, because during the PI planning, one of the things you do is a Scrum of Scrum. So the first check is if you have everything you need. All your team members are there, your PO is there, and every stuff. Now, why are we doing this check? Because we need to see if the engineering practices are in place for you to deliver. So we check on the business context. Do we have the futures? Do we have enough work that can carry us through that period? Do we have enough technical capacity that can carry us through this period? Do we have the knowledge workers? It's you, the Scrum Master, you're checking based on your team, but every other Scrum Master in the train is also doing the same thing for their team, right? And if you're good enough, you want to coordinate with the release train engineer to see if there's any way you can help in pre-facilitation, maybe setting up some of the environment. And yeah, so those are some of the things you want to do before every PI. Now, before every PI, if this question come up to you, if you're in an interview, now if they ask how do you prepare for a PI, it's more or less they're asking you what is your knowledge about the IP iteration, because before you prepare the PI, it's the last iteration before another PI. Then also double checking to make sure that the previous PI, most of the system, the demos have completed. You've done inspect and adapt to ensure that every challenge that was identified is resolved, and some improvement items are available for us to continue planning within the next circle. So those are some of the things you need to take into consideration before every PI. But let me summarize this into one sentence for those who are still in the market, because one of the reasons we are here is for those who are trying to get in. What is the role of a Scrum Master prior to every PI? The first thing is that you want to double check with your release train engineer or with your system architect or whosoever is responsible for ditching out those top 10 features or the features your team will be working on, to give you an idea of what the next PI look like. So you start having conversation with your team on what they should expect. You also want to prepare your team. If it's the first time for your team being on a PI, you want to give them an idea of what they should expect in their first PI, walking them through on how the agenda will be set out and what is going to be their role throughout the period. And then you also want to make sure that you are mentally ready for the event. It can be overwhelming, mentally ready because you need to coordinate with other Scrum Master if you have dependency. You need to think about you're going to be in breakout rooms. What system are we going to use to host the PI planning? For instance, if we're hosting our PI planning using Miro, for instance, then you need, if it's your first time using it and you don't take the time to prepare, what's going to happen when they actually maybe start sharing the whiteboard and asking you to help your team navigate? You're going to be completely lost. It can be really embarrassing. If we're using Teams and they say, oh, can you go on Teams and create a breakout room session for your team? And you have not done that, it's going to be very embarrassing, which are some of the stuff you need to start preparing before every PI.
Thank you so very much. That was a long one. And you touched several parts already. Okay, so we do have two questions. I really got a lot from what you said, what you explained, and it makes total sense because it really resonates. So we have some questions from Mo and I believe Loretta. So from Mo, the first question is, when do you start getting ready before next PI planning? So Dr. Francis talked about IP, which is innovation planning. So that is a period of time when a team actually gets to plan for their next PI. Now that period can be 2 weeks. So you have 2 weeks in advance before you can start your PI. And before that, you already know that, okay, there's PI coming up. So these 2 weeks of time, which is the IP, the team, or 1 week, the team does are not engaged in any work. What they are focused on doing is to ensure that they are gathering materials, they have everything in place, they are breaking down features that they will be committing to for their PI. So that is what this period is used for. And again, if you're asking about the time, you will use the innovation period for that, which is called, the abbreviation is IP. Mo, that's your question. I don't know if I answered your question. So the next question here is, after the PI planning, what next? Can you explain the work of Scrum Master during the 5 to 6 iterations? So after PI, actually, what happens is the team have their same events, their Scrum events. The fact that they've done PI planning, having 5 to 6 iterations of work that they need to commit to, that doesn't necessarily mean that each of these user stories that they have, been able to place in these different iterations are broken down in a way that they can just go ahead and commit to the work. No, maybe the first iteration or second is good, but they'll still need to do their, sprint planning. So they'll be having all their various events. So the Scrum Master being there, you know that one of your goal is to support the team and ensure that, they are working in a way that is sustainable and that they are happy. So throughout these different events, you will be facilitating to ensure that, they are not derailed and that they are achieving the goal. So that sprint planning will still happen, where they'll have conversation around the work that they break into the different iterations. So for instance, if they are committing to the very first iterations for next week, this is just an example here. What will happen is the various events that you already have scheduled for your team as a Scrum Master, you're still going to be coordinating with that. Like, you're still going to be facilitating them and ensuring that you are focused on what you planned for that specific iteration. So I don't know, Dr. Francis, would you want to add something? The question is, after the PI planning, what next? Can you explain the work of Scrum Master during the 5 to 6 iterations?
All right. So
So
after the
after
PI
the PI
planning,
planning,
what you
what
do
you
is
do is
you go back and
back
practice
and
Scrum.
practice Scrum,
Right? I
right?
think
I think
that's a
that's a
simple
simple
explanation to that.
explanation.
What do I
What
mean
do
by
I
you
mean
go
by you
back
go
and
back and
practice Scrum? Now,
now
Scrum is about the circle, right? Your sprint planning, your daily stand up, backlog refinement, sprint review, and retrospective. That's what happened after PI planning. PI planning is just to ensure that, number one, since we have multiple teams collaborating, we want to be able to have transparency on at high level. What are the futures my team is working on? How am I coordinating with team Jermaine, how am I coordinating with Team Peter? How am I coordinating with Team Jane? Those are different Scrum Master. And then you need to agree with the different Scrum Master or with the different teams. Oh, I have a dependency with your team. When do you plan to complete this? And that also help you on how to plan that. We want to make sure we resolve that. So that's the major difference between a safe environment and a Scrum environment, that layer of planning. So after PI planning, go back and practice Scrum. Although they're going to call them mostly iteration, but it's the same thing you are going to do within the Scrum environment by having your sprint planning. The fact that we did planning during PI doesn't eliminate you from doing planning. Why? Because remember, our backlog is a living backlog. Things might change, requirements might shift a bit, right? Priorities might change. You might have technical debt coming back. You need to always kind of be flexible to look at that. Frequent planning, looking at even during a daily stand up, a developer can be working on something and find out that, oh, we did not actually take into consideration, we missed out some certain stuff. I may cause you to want to replan. So what you do, you continuously you plan, you review, you retrospect, the cycle continue for the next period, and the last iteration before the next PI, you leave it open for what IP, what we explained earlier, preparation for the next PI. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you so very much. So please use the comment section if we did answer your question and you're satisfied with it. If not, you can paraphrase it and then we'll ensure that we address them. So thank you all for joining. I know that some of you didn't have this link and it just came very prompt. So really apologize for that. And before you join, I did say that this is my first time of going live on my channel, or it's my first time going live. So just bear with me. A couple of things might not be 100% great, but that is just the beauty of Agile. Okay, so we keep retrospecting and making adjustment in area that is not working. So sorry, Dr. Francis, I breathe and live Agile. Okay, let's go into the facilitation part. What does a Scrum Master do during PI? But we go into addressing that, I just want to say a few things around that preparation before the PI itself. Scrum Master and Dr. Francis has addressed this, and I really appreciate all the inputs. So before you actually go into PI, you don't want to go empty-handed, like you have nothing to expect. So you want to make sure that that you being the Scrum Master, you're coordinating with your team and other teams. That's why in an agile environment, with this safe being part of the framework that the team uses, you have this Scrum where the Scrum Masters and the Scrum Masters connect with with the different Scrum Masters belong to one art. They do connect to discuss dependencies. Again, it goes a long way for them to know how to really address these dependencies, because we do not want a situation whereby, if at all, we have this specific product that we are working on as teams, we don't know when team A has to come in, team B has to come in. So that constant communication, that constant conversation around dependencies and agreeing what team is going to go first and what team is going to go last really helps. And when doing the PI itself, this conversation or these dependencies that were being identified, they bring it up. Again, this event is just 2 days, and people don't really have time to start digging so deep into getting information. So this period of time that you have, that a team has, for them not to do any specific work, but just to focus on getting ready for the PI, really helps them to put everything together to ensure that they have all this. I mean, as far as communication is concerned, logistics, everything they need, they want to put it, on. They want to make sure that they have it in place before the actual event itself. So, okay, let's talk about the facilitation part. What does a Scrum Master do in PI planning? And I'll let Dr. Francis to go first.
All right, thank you very much. What does the Scrum Master do in PI planning? For you to be able to effectively understand what the Scrum Master does during PI planning, you need to understand the agenda. The agenda is a step by step of what it entails. So we definitely have executive briefing, which is always the first item in the PI. Why is it very important? It's very important because um, they need to give us the context of the business, the state of the business, so that when we are building something, we understand how the end users and everyone involved, we feel value, right? Just imagine you're part of building a product that is going to be one of the world leading product in the market. That's a big achievement, just that feeling, which was the business context is very important. And looking at also the product vision something like that. So within that first part where we're having the business context, the product vision, and the architectural design that we're going to be using, you, the Scrum Master, it's time for you to listen carefully. A lot of Scrum Master kind of just be passive on these, and they're only waiting for when they get into break room to start helping their team. Now, for you to be a valuable Scrum Master, you need to master the business context of the product you're building, not the technical aspect. A lot of people want to say, oh, I need to be a bit technical so that I can help my team much better. You don't need to be technical to help your team. You need to understand the business context. Because if a team member is not delivering based on what they should do, you need to show them the impact that their action is causing on business and how much we stand to lose. Just imagine we're working on a $10 million deal, and one person, because they don't so much care, they're not coming to daily stand up. Just because they're not able to meet up their delivery is costing the organization this amount of money. And so when you try to show them in that non-technical aspect, you understand. But just imagine you want to have that conversation with them from the technical aspect. You don't know anything. They tell you, hey, look, I can do this in less than no time. So that's not your business. So don't even go into their space. You have your strength, which is showing them how it do that, which is why the first part is important. Now, specifically, the role of a Scrum Master is going to be in the breakout room 1 and the breakout room 2. If we're running a full day PI planning in person, the breakout room won't happen on the first day. Now, as a Scrum Master, the breakout room 1 is more or less like you facilitating an enlarged backlog prioritization meeting, right? Say we have bigger items, which are futures. Now you are facilitating for your team to be able to break those futures down into story. They might not really break it down detailedly, but break it down in such a way that we can have an estimate of how we are going to spread it across our entire PI circle. When we talk about a PI circle, it's averagely between 8 weeks and 12 weeks. But in practice, you will not always find that. You see environment, they run the PI for 14 weeks. I've seen also for 16 weeks. So it differs from many environments. The same thing, they're going to tell you, okay, we should have about 5 to 12 teams in uh, in an agile release train. I've seen trains with 16 teams and even 17 teams. So that differentiation is what you expect in practice. But then what you're doing is that you are helping your team to be able to break down the features that have been assigned to your team throughout the period of your iteration with the notion that you want to leave the IP iteration, which is the last iteration, a bit void of work. You want to leave enough space to finish any uncompleted work and to address any challenge. So when you ensure that your team have a draft, that's why it's called a draft plan, not a full plan. You also make sure that your team is identifying dependency. We're building this aspect of the future, and it's going to depend on this other future. The question you might want to ask me here is, how do I know that my team is going to have dependency? You don't need to know. Your team member, the developer, the knowledge worker know exactly how the system are connected, right? So they know exactly, they'll tell you, okay, to do this work, we need to liaise with maybe the mobile team, we need to liaise with the data sensor team, we need to liaise with the web portal team in order to find out what they're gonna do before we pick up this one. And then you find out, okay, where is the data sensor team? Normally, prior to every PI, you're gonna have a channel where you put all the breakout room, so you can go in there and say, okay, we are planning this story or this future, and it has dependency with your team. And then you discuss with them, yes, we're going to be completing this by the third sprint. Now you come back to your team, they will be completing it by the third sprint. So we can plan to start this work by the fourth sprint. And that's what we do during the first breakout room. And the reason we are helping to facilitate those dependency is because at the end of the day, we want to take all complaints which are potential risks that might limit us to management for them to be able to look at, okay, maybe the way we structure it, we might not be able to meet our goal because there are too many dependencies that are happening, which is a big risk because there's so many of the future require heavy testing and we don't have enough testing capacity, right? Or many of the work we're doing uh, need a lot of work from the DevOps engineer aspect. We have just one DevOps engineer, so we need to decompose from this end and shift it to the other end. So, which is what we are doing during breakout room one. We are trying to spread out our work throughout the IP iteration. We're trying to define dependency. We are trying to put out our objective. How do we come up with PI objective? It's simply looking at when you decompose a feature simply means a functionality. You're working on a function. You can convert that into an objective. So when they say, all right, PI objectives, you don't need to formulate them. You just need to understand the different feature or the sub features you'll be working on, convert that into objective. By spring one, we plan to complete this objective. And the objective will be futures, and it has a set of story aligned to it, right? And then you also participate in the Scrum of Scrum. Ideally, there are going to be two Scrum of Scrum during day one. The first, before you go, any organization may have it differently, right? That's the beauty of Agile. The first, before you start your breakout room, you meet with the release engineer. They're just doing a check to make sure you're okay, you have all what you need. Is there anything missing? Is there anything you need help with? And then maybe somewhere in the middle of the planning, they just want to check if your team is okay, if you already start putting item into your backlog, if you'll be ready to present your draft plan by the end of the day. So you want to double check that and see if you can also, if you need coordination or you're finding it difficult in collaborating with other team, we also discuss that during breakout of one. Then when we put out the plan at the end of the day, management review it and give us feedback the next day. What we do the next day is simply rework on management, complete the breakdowns of stories that we did not really complete during the first day, and make sure that we have our full risks written out, which might be potential hindrance, and then written out and room. Okay, we're not going to talk about Rome today, just mean evaluating what the risks are, but then, and also making sure that we are doing our vote of confidence. Vote of confidence is what helps us to say that we are confident that what we plan, we are going to do. The business must rely on every team commitment, not on planning. If we plan and we are not committed, we're not going to do it. So that's the role of Scrum Master, breakout room one, breakout room two, facilitating, coordinating dependency, participating in the Scrum of Scrum, and making sure that your team can build a plan they will be able to commit to.
Thank you so very much. Again, said quite a lot. You went above above the expectation, but anyway, so again, really appreciate all your everything you said because it's really powerful. So again, like you said, every organization is different or the environment is really different. So depending on where you fall into or where you work in, things are gonna you're gonna do things, the way that environment sees the need for. So I have actually talking about me, my experience in a safe environment or doing PI. What did I do, as a Scrum Master during that time? Everything you've said here, That is 100% true. So part of what I did is I collaborated with the release train engineer, because then in that organization we did have a release train engineer. I've worked in another organization where there was no release train engineer. But the one that we had the release train engineer, I coordinated with the release train engineer. So during this period of preparation, the release train engineer will touch base with the various teams. Hey, what is going on? Is there anything that is lacking? Is there anything, that you want me to be of help with? Because again, they are the ones facilitating this PI, this 2 days event. The relation engineer are the ones doing that. So me as a Scrum Master, I work hand in hand with the relation engineer, with all the information I have, or that I gather with my team during or with other teams during Scrum of Scrum, our internal kind of issues. I raise that to the relation engineer just so that there's really nothing that is lacking at my end. If there's any question or any help that I need, I reach out to the relation engineer. Now, during the welcome mock with Freddie Elsie, you're welcome, and welcome everyone. I really apologize we didn't give a shout out. So welcome Wahab, welcome Agile with Mo, welcome yes, Loretta. I think those are the 3 people we have here for now. So you all are very welcome. And please use the comment section to ask questions that you might have regarding PI planning. And we are going to be addressing that. So yeah, my goal is, because I see a question here, how does SM support the release train engineer? So I work hand in hand with a relation engineer to ensure that all the information that I've gathered with my team and other teams doing Scrum of Scrum, I'm channeling that to the relation engineer, so that there's really nothing that I need to worry about, or that the relation engineer needs to worry about regarding our arts or my team, and that my team pretty much has everything they need as well. I'm gathering all that information and ensuring that communication that they need to have with other teams is definitely taking place. Now, during the actual PI planning itself, my goal is to ensure that, so again, I'm still working with a release train engineer, but now I'm more focused on my team. When it comes to the breakout rooms or the breakout session, I am there with my team to ensure that they are not derailed from the conversation they ought to be having. And the conversation is more around, okay, what do we need to plan for these 6 iterations, provided, it is 6 iterations that this organization has as a cadence for their PI. So what do we need to do? And before then, the team might have already, so they are already aware of the feature that they will be working on. It is not coming in as the very first time, because I've equally worked in an organization where the feature is being presented during PI. It becomes so hard for the team to plan. It is really challenging. But the other organizations I've worked with, I did, communicate the need for the team to actually, for the product owner to communicate those features and for the team to actually break them down. So doing that IP, that innovation planning, we do pre-planning. So the team's actually doing some work, some work before they actually get into the actual PI itself. So it helps the team to have enough information or to be comfortable enough to, for the PI to go smoothly. So while the team are in their breakout session, my goal is to work with them to ensure that, one, they are not derailed, and that if there is anything that they are lacking, I am there as that, impediment remover. Any impediment on their plate, I am there to ensure that, everything works smoothly. I'm taking on that impediment and resolving them, because my goal is for them to achieve, or our goal, we have one goal in place. Our goal is for us to plan as much as we need to. Now, there are times when, the Scrum Masters will have to go for SOS, which is Scrum of Scrum. And like Dr. Francis rightly said, when this time comes in, again, my team is still planning. The product owner is there with the teams, because sometimes when it comes to Scrum of Scrum, okay, I'll go for my session. It might take just 30 minutes. And after that 30 minutes, I'll go in for that Scrum of Scrum, meet with other teams, and we, talk about the dependencies that we fully identified, because during that IP period, again, that is when we identified all of these things. So this is not the first place we're identifying it. I will fully discuss, okay, which team will probably have to go first and what not. So all that is taken care of. The main thing during this Scrum, especially for the one, is to ensure that we are all on the same page, and the relational engineer is there with the entire teams that belong to a specific Agile release train. So the art. So now, after this Scrum, I make sure I return back to my team, and then the product owner will equally have their own sync. We call it PO sync, Meta Scrum. So they do coordinate around the features that the teams are working on. Because again, you'll realize that some of the teams will have to, I mean, due to the dependency. So the product owners equally have their own meetings to talk about the features and how to go about it, like which one needs to come first, which one is most important, and all that. So that is their own meeting. But during that time while the product owner is away, I must have returned back to the team, and I am ensuring that they are planning. So be it when the break time comes, they'll probably go for break and come back. Then, but the planning continues, and the goal is again we want to plan as much as we can because it is 2 days event. We want to be able to want to ensure that we are planning enough to carry from the first sprint to the sixth to actually the fifth. Because if it's six iteration, probably the last one is IP where they don't really have to do anything. So I'm ensuring that they are planning and that they're having the right conversation around the work that they need to plan for. So business objective is in place. We are talking about we are addressing any risk that might be involved in the work. So that's pretty much what I do during this breakout session during PI. So Dr. Francie, I think I addressed this, but I'll give you the room. Mo asked a question: how does SM support RTA?
All right.
Right.
So,
So okay, before I go on mute, sorry. Welcome, Olawale. You're welcome. Okay, right on.
all right. So, how does the SM support the release train? You want to make sure you're collaborating with the release train before every PI to see if there is any way you can help. It might just be maybe letting people into the Zoom room. Those are like things you can do. It might just be maybe you helping them prepare the conference page where everyone's going to put their their link. Yeah, so it might also be uh you partnering them way ahead of time to ask question and not ask them at the last minute. That's also the way you help them to do their work right so that they don't get overwhelmed, right? But it's gonna be more on the communication level or how you partner with them. So i- in any case, it's more like you open up to like you have your own role. Your role is not the release train engineer role. So what the way you collaborate with them is on how you can assist them. They're gonna ask you, okay, can you provide the capacity for your team and the average velocity because they need that. They need to use that information to look at how many features they can fit into that PI. Now, if you don't provide it on time, they will not be able to do their own work. So you collaborate with them by also ensuring that you're giving them information on time so that they can do their work better. And I think someone asked a comment on epics and futures. I think that was that. Trying to see if I can see that in a comment. Some organizations use the term future while some use epic. Um, what's the difference? This is a kind of I would say more or less something a lot of people confuse with epics and futures. Now, this is a clarification of the use of epics and futures. Epics are used at the portfolio level, but for epic simply means that it needs to go beyond one PI, right? You need to cut across several PI. They're broken down to future. The confusion comes in because on the Jira board, there is no menu as futures. So we use Epic to represent futures in the Jira backlog, which is what makes a lot of people feel like epics and future are interchangeably. In the real sense, when you talk about epic, we have the epic backlog and epic enabler. They happen at the portfolio. When we talk about portfolio, we're talking about leadership. We're talking about business owners. Business owner are the one that coordinate with program management. Business owner are the one that make decision. Management is the one that implement the decision that is made from leadership. So Epic should cut across several months. Features should be completed within couple of weeks. That's what plan PI in weeks. But then when these features are being fed in the Jira backlog doesn't have a menu as feature. So it has a menu as epic. So we name them as epic. But if you're using an Azure DevOps bot, you realize that there's a term feature in there, which is what kind of make a confusion. Some people feel like, oh, some organizations use epic, some use. So if you ever work in an organization and they're making confusion between those words, you need to clarify them what they should actually represent.
Thank you very, very much. That was a brief distinction of what an epic and a feature really is. And that is true because I've worked in an organization where there was a particular project that they called Epic. And, in that particular organization, we didn't use anything like Epic. We could call it Agile Epic, but you barely use it because what they even call Epic, they're actually features. So again, an epic will take a long time for it to be completed. And teams cannot really plan at an epic level because imagine that your iterations spans from between 1 to 6 weeks, or I mean sprints, or 1 to 5 sprints. So epic itself is actually more than that. So how can you really compare both? Like Dr. Francis rightly said, it is definitely a feature, but the thing is, because of the tool that they use, they don't have certain features like feature itself. So it's gonna be they will be planning at an epic level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's really an epic, because again, it's something that is way bigger, that goes above a particular PI. So you want to be mindful of that. So thank you so very much, Dr. Francis. I'm scrolling to see if there are any other questions that we probably missed, and I can go to the next. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of PI. What are the benefits? Okay, I want to focus it around what is the I think someone asked a question around the on-site for PI. Is it 2 days? I mean, how long is it? I think I saw a question in the comment. Okay, how many days does virtual PI planning take as opposed to the physical event one? Now, I'm going to respond to this. So I've attended, in my own experience, I've attended both, I've been in person and I've been online, and both of them took 2 days. So it doesn't matter, except, the organization decides to tweak things around. But where I have attended, I mean, or the different organizations I've been in that I attended in person and virtually, it was 2 days. Dr. Francis, I don't know if your experience is different, but if you want to chime in.
All right, yeah, thank you. What an organization should take into consideration? They most often take into consideration how geographically distributed their teams are. Or I've seen an organization carried across 3 days. So the first day is just the business context, the vision, and uh, the architectural rundown of the stuff. Then from day two, they do breakout room one. All of that happened in day two, and then day three they come around up. So I've also seen negotiation plan it over 3 days. Now I've not worked in this organization because I have a community of practice where other Scrum Masters doing the PI, so they share their differences, and you get to learn a lot of this diversity that happen across different organizations. And you see also there's some talent recently. They do PI, but the Scrum Master don't go to PI. So, so I just said that the Scrum Master don't go to PI. So they have an ad hoc team that do their PI planning for them, and the team only receive already features that have been broken down and unloaded on the backlog. And what they just need to do their daily stand up, and then go to Scrum or Scrum once every 2 weeks. Right. So there's a whole lot of diversity in the way Agile is implemented. That is why I always If you go into any new environment, don't try to go by the Scrum guide. Oh, according to Agile, we can do this. No, focus on the value and the culture of that organization. And in case you want to introduce anything, don't feel work is not broken. Have valuable conversation. Jot down your note, raise them up as suggestions, and see how they accommodate that. If what is working for them is working for them, let it be. Don't try to be the agile police, right? And so you can do one. Okay.
And I like when you said agile police because that is not even something that should even exist in an agile environment. You're not a police to nobody. Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a couple of other people that joined. Welcome, Emeka and Ifelua. So, Mock with Freddy Elsie is actually a YouTuber. She does mukbang videos. If you are curious, please go and subscribe to her channel. It's really amazing. She does upload great videos. So, anyway, let's dive back to why we are here, the PI again. So that is my experience actually, 2 days, whether physical or virtually. So, and I actually like Dr. Francis' um, experience as well. Again, that's why two heads are always better than one because I want to hear your experience and you want to hear mine as well. So it goes a long way to helping give more information out there to people. So we have a question here. What is the frequency for PI? So the frequency for PR is it depends on the organization. Some organizations do it quarterly, some organizations do it in 6 months time, some organizations do it in 8 months. So it just depends. It just depends on the organization. But the ones I've worked in, again, this is my experience. It's been at a quarterly base. So I don't know about Dr. Francis, but we are curious to hear his.
Yeah, most organizations try to do quarterly base. I've seen some that does 14 weeks as well, and some does 15 weeks as well. And some they do the least I've seen it's actually 4 iteration. Yeah, but they did kind of vary from time to time.
Of course. Thank you so very much. Now, Ife said, should organizations where requirements changes often be doing PI planning? It's planning for 6 iteration. I think you wanted to say planning, but I saw penning. So, okay, the question is, do they do it for 6 iterations? Dr. Francis, you want to take this one?
Okay,
Should
so the
organizations
question
where
is
PI? Mhm.
go again with the question, Christian.
Okay. Should organizations where requirements changes often be doing PI planning? It's planning for 6 iterations.
Okay, yeah, that is a conversation that's gonna depend on the organization. The reason they are doing PI is to be able to catch up with to be predictable, right? And also to get more stability on changing requirements. So, as we said, Agile, the most important thing in implementing Agile, it's not the ceremonies, it's in the learning that occur in the process. So, if you've been asked if it's going to be better to do a 3 week, 4 week cycle, 5 week cycle. What is your response? Your response it is going to be based on the feedback that we have from implementing that we can decide which one is much better. If the requirements are highly volatile, then you want to make sure you do shorter cycle so that you have time to always come back and plan. If you can predict more longer, then there's no need to do shorter cycle like 8 weeks. You should be doing quarterly in order to make sure that you maximizing resources.
Appreciate that response. Okay, I think we've addressed all the questions here. Now, let's talk about the benefits of PI planning to so when it comes to on-site and virtual, which one would you consider to be most important? Is there anyone that takes preference over another?
No. Uh, meeting face to face is always good because there's a better connection just by you sitting with someone and having that close face to face talk is different. But there is no disadvantage of meeting online today as the world's going global. Instead, there have been so many advantages. Company cutting down costs for meeting virtually, and also the ability for people to even learn how to use these tools. So skills are increasing. We need to learn how to create breakout rooms. Prior to COVID and people going online, many people never knew what getting on an online communication like this was like. You don't know how Zoom work, but we can use Zoom and you can just share something with someone, teach them something in less than no time. And a lot of people have getting new skills because of the online ability. In person is good because of building relationship, but I don't think one is better than the other. It's just based on the context, preparation, and preference of the company.
I agree with you 100%. No one is really better over the other. Yes, some do have, I mean, they all have the advantages and maybe disadvantages. If you want to weigh both, it's pretty much going to be on the same level. Same thing like you comparing CSM certification and PSM. They have the same
Yeah,
value. So they carry the
that's
same
right.
weight. Because some people at one point, the reason why I asked this question is because there was once a debate about okay, being online, being virtually and being on site, like being on site is better than being, virtual. And their reason was, okay, you get to see people every day. If there's any meeting you need to schedule with that person, you can just go out, go there and talk with the person, which is 100% true. So in our virtual world today, we still have we have Teams, we have Google Meet, depending on what organization uses. You can just schedule a session with someone. If they're not available, they are not available, and their status can show you if they're available or not. So depending on how we try to, see one being advantageous over the other, it is really not 100% true, but it is what it is. Every people have their own opinion.
That's right.
The most important thing is, okay, if you want to connect with this person, yeah, schedule a meeting. The person will, will definitely connect during that call and you have the conversation. So we still have that face to face, but it's just in a virtual world.
Hmm.
So okay. Um Now let's talk about the coaches when it comes to agile coaches doing PI. What do you do doing PI as an agile coach? So I'll take the first shot at this. So okay, someone said Zoom fatigue. Okay. Okay, so we should talk about Zoom fatigue. What about in person, like when you're in person? I want sometimes when you talk for so long, you just feel like, okay, you just want to stay away from people. So it is not just the aspect of, being virtual. Okay. So, but talking about an agile coach, what I've done to support the teams during PI. So I've worked in this organization, and one thing I realized is in this particular organization, this was their first time to actually do PI. And so then I had three teams that I was supporting because what happened is their Scrum Masters was internal. They were internal to that particular team. So at that point, because they had little or no knowledge, this was their very first time. They were trained, yes, they got transitioned to Agile, but this was their first time of doing PI. So during
Hmm.
this time, there was a whole lot of hand holding. I had like three teams that I was supporting at the time. And during this period, especially when they go into their breakout rooms, but before that, we did that um, pre-planning before we actually went into the PI planning itself. Again, it helps the team to be equipped with the information they need. That way they can comfortably plan for their work. Other than that, PI planning will really suck. Like it will be there. I mean, it being their first time, you don't want a situation whereby they become demoralized or they don't even like to continue with it. Give them that opportunity for them to embrace it, for them to for it to be attractive to them. So we did. I ensured that the team that was supporting did that pre-planning before. Then when they got to the actual PI itself, then I supported them throughout. So I was acting as a scrum master and an agile coach at the same time. And just because I wanted the scrum master to get the experience of what he or she needed to be doing at that particular time. So it really made the experience very enjoyable or friendly to them. Because after the entire planning itself, I asked them, would you like to participate in PI planning for our next when next we connect? Because then we're doing it at a quarterly base. So they were like, oh yeah, so long as they're gonna have someone to support them. So again, my goal is if you're going to something for your very first time, I don't want you to be put at a spot where you'll be struggling. I don't want that kind of situation. It's your first time, you need to observe, you need to learn, you need to ask questions as much as you need to. So um throughout these 2 days that they did plan for their work, I was, there was that hand holding on my part to them because again, they were new to this. First, they just got transitioned to Agile and now they're entering another framework, which is larger. So there was really need for me to keep supporting them. But at the end of it all, I wouldn't say 100% everything went smooth, for their very first time, but they enjoyed it. They were interested to attend it again. They were so interested to even train some other people or to let other people shadow them. So that is one good thing that I got from the very first time that I supported this particular teams, as an agile coach. Any experience on your part, Dr. Francis?
You said most of the aspect. As an agile coach, the goal is to be there for the team. Oh, I'm having trouble connecting with getting all my team member put in their hours. What should I do? You need to work with them what to do. Help them with how to coach their team, how to motivate their team, and also be a standby for them in case they're running into trouble with hard time team members. Stepping in as a third party to kind of just soften that environment, it's always very important. So as an agile coach, you're more like the watchman for the entire team, making sure that the even most often just having this conversation with them at the end of the cycle. How did it go? You think you're doing this? Do you need any support? Just being there, it's a whole big lot of help. So agile coaches are like the backbones, and just be there. Don't be an invisible coach for your train. Just being there, making sure you're supporting them, making sure you're checking on them. You making sure you're also not just the team leader, but also the developers, making sure you're connecting and they have everything they need. Just that alone means a lot. During one of our retrospective, when we're being asked, team members were being asked to give appreciation. And one of the stuff that stood out for them, which I really, really noted, was like, oh, we love the fact that you always come into all the sessions smiling. It doesn't matter if it's a very serious scenario, you always assure us that everything is okay. There's nothing to bother before we go into the solution. So just that environment is a whole lot. And I also had like some feedback. They say, oh, look, we love the motivation you always share every Monday and Friday on the team channel. It just kind of, wow, give us some great weekends idea and great way to start our week. Those are super powerful. So most often when we kind of feel that we are super human beings, we always feel not enough, right? Like, oh, I'm not doing enough. Oh, I'm not doing enough. Oh, there's something I'm missing. Just be yourself. Be yourself, but then understand what you need to do, and then just be yourself in doing it.
Thank you so much. Well explained. And again, it is true. Like it's very obvious and evident that it shouldn't always be about work. You should always
Yeah.
spice things up. bring in some fun. Let people feel like, yeah, we are human beings. We are not robots. We are not.
Yeah.
It's not all. It shouldn't be all about work. Let's try to do something different. So, just in alignment with what you said, or just to anchor on that, yes, it's always good to pop up, share some great how do they call it? They call it GIFs on Teams, some GIFs, about that specific day, just so that people can relax and feel comfortable that yes, this is actually a friendly environment. It's not just all about work again. Okay, so Emeka asks a question: where is the release plan kept? Is there a centralized location where it's accessible to everyone? Francis, I'll mute.
In most of the cases, you will need to ask for it. Uh, Most often, when it's being kept, it's accessible to most managers. As a team lead, as a Scrum Master, you need to request for that release plan. It's a very important tool for the organization, right? Sometimes it might be kept in confidence, but then only few people are given access to it. A release plan is more like a secret for the organization, which means this is how we plan to deliver this to our client. This is very important. But it's available for the team because the team is a part of it. Most often, as Scrum Master, when we get into every team, that's also one of the aspects we should be asking. Do we have a product roadmap? Is there a release plan? Where can I find it? Request that information. The POs most often have access to the release plan and the product roadmap. So if you ask your PO and they don't have access to, you need to advise them that they need to have access to because that's what guide them to kind of forecast. If not, they will always want to ask maybe get just enough, which is not going to be good for the team. But in a case where it's kept, most organization, it's mostly on SharePoint, and you can be given access to that SharePoint. Um, Sometimes they can also put it on Confluence, right, for transparency, but then they kind of limit access to it. When you click on it, they will ask you to request for access so that they know exactly who have access to it.
Okay. Thank you again. So we have two more questions and we are going to end this live. And again, we appreciate everyone that was able to make it. So, Ifuluma, I'm sorry if I don't call your name so well. Your question is, if your team is struggling in breaking down work in order to load up 6 iterations, how do you help them? So if your team is struggling with breaking down work in order to load up 6 iterations, how do you help them? Okay, so when it comes to breaking down work and teams are struggling, I mean that's why the team has this, or the Scrum team has this role called a product owner. So the product owner better understands, the expectation of the customer. So they probably have more information around that work. If they are struggling to break that work
Yeah,
down work, it simply means that they don't have enough knowledge about that particular work. So at this point, they have to ask question. If there's any question they have, let them channel that question to the product owner. Because the only reason why a team will be struggling in breaking down work is because, again,
they don't
they don't
understand.
have enough information. Like there are things that are lacking. They should be able to ask questions to the product owner. That's why they have the product owner there to answer their questions. And again, if the product owner don't have enough information about that particular work, probably that is not something they need to commit to right away. Or probably it is they could call it a spike for that time, then gather information around it. But there's really no need for the team to, struggle around breaking down work, especially when it comes to PI, because again, what I always preach, irrespective of the organization I'm moving, is we don't want this kind of situation where teams will be struggling. So that is why we have that pre-planning. It is very
Mhm.
important for the teams to have that pre-planning before they actually go into the PI planning event itself. Because again, things like this do happen. I have a friend that has reached out to me, hey, my team was struggling doing this PI. And a couple of questions that I asked, she said, yeah, these questions make sense. And honestly, we did not do all of this. So that is why they were struggling. Have that conversation. It shouldn't be the very first time they are seeing that particular type of work, or it shouldn't be the very first time they are introduced to, the work item they need to plan on. However, so this period of the IP, we call it innovation planning, helps the team to break down work into smaller chunks. That way they go into once they go into PI planning itself, they are just having conversation. They're mostly having conversation around the work, not really because they are struggling to break it down. Because again, it is something that they should have already addressed. So that is my thought around this. Okay. Wahab said you wanted to talk about the benefits of PI planning before you got distracted. Okay, we're gonna talk about it. Okay, so what are the benefits of PI planning? I think I'll go second.
All right. I think when we started, we kind of highlight some of the benefits by giving the example. You need to deliver to one person and you need to deliver to 50 people within the same period. Now, PI planning is encouraged when we're dealing with large solutions, right? And we get multiple teams to do it in a lesser time. And I had a scenario, and a company had just one team and they're doing PI. Like, why do they want to do PI with one team? Like, what is the need of uh you doing PI? PI safe is called K Agile, which means we want to take it in a bigger level. It's more like you're starting your business, then you're expanding it, right? So the benefit is that it helps us to be able to deliver in a complex solution in a faster way because of that collaboration that is happening along the same team. Now, the second benefit is that it brings everyone into a shared vision. Everyone understand what the entire organization is working on compared to a Scrum environment where we engage more at the team level. In a PI environment, we as Scrum Masters engage not only at the team level, we also engage at the program level. And during the PI planning, you also have stakeholders, every other person in the organization part of it, which gives us a more bigger understanding of what the organization is working on. So it brings us into that shared value of the business vision and help everyone to think in a more bigger space. There's also so much opportunity to learn by partnering with other Scrum Masters, Scrum of Scrum, understanding what is working for others and how we can learn from it as well. So those are some of the benefits of PI planning. And now it also helps for better prediction. Remember, you're planning for the next how many weeks? About 12 weeks or so. So you're not thinking, oh, we don't know what we're going to be working on in the next spring, or the PO is not available. All of that work can be pre-planned, and then we are more better prepared to handle every PI or every iteration.
Okay, thank you so much. And just to add to what you said, so at the end of the PI, there's something we call the vote of confidence for various teams. So one of the advantage to this is it helps communicate how comfortable a team can actually deliver what they've planned on. If because again with a vote of confidence, if it's something that they probably planned for the different iterations and they realize that it's not really something that is feasible, they won't be able to deliver on it. This is the right time for them to speak their mind so that the business is aware of it. So that is one advantage. And Dr. Francis talked about that retrospective. So they do have retrospective at the end of the PI. Everyone, how comfortable are you with what just happened? What do you think we can make adjustments to in the future? So that is very important because again, the beauty about Agile is we always want to keep making that improvement. You always want to keep going a step ahead. Even if you stumble right now, the goal is look back on where you stumbled and then learn from it and keep moving.
That's right.
So that is very important for it is again it's one of the advantage of PI. So PI is definitely, so some people don't really, or yeah, they don't believe in that, But honestly, it is what happens when organizations, keep growing. And again, we always want to grow. We as human beings, we want to grow. So when organizations grow, how do we handle communication issues? Because it's going to be
Mhm.
hard for that communication to be effective. So PI comes in to solve this problem. Okay. Someone asked a question here. I said that was going to be the last question. But can you tell us some of the questions you asked your friend? This will help us greatly. That's from Emeka. So, Emeka, some of the questions I asked, or the question I did ask that my friend was when she said her team was struggling to plan. The question I asked her is, how many features were they supposed to plan on? She said, well, at that time, she didn't really know. The next question is, okay, because then I didn't have any information. She just brought she just told me or communicated that the team were struggling during
Mhm.
PI planning and or in their breakout session, they were struggling to plan their work to break them down. So my next question is, did they actually got introduced to this feature? Did they ask question before even this PI itself? And she said it's no, they did not do that. Did they even do some pre-planning work? It's a no. So they just went into the PI with no information at all. There was nothing. It just got introduced to them. Obviously, it's gonna be hard for them to plan. So they
That's right.
will definitely struggle. So for this, just for clarification here, during that PI, the only thing they planned for was maybe one or two iteration worth of work. Again, it becomes hard. Same thing, like that is why we do have backlog refinement in Scrum, even though it has not been fully, adopted, but we do have backlog refinement because it helps, it takes care of a whole lot of things, before we actually get into sprint planning. Because I didn't mean we just had sprint planning to plan our work. Then it's gonna be hard because one, we've not really dived into the work itself. We've not really, broken it down into some sort of format that we can understand before adding more details. So pre-planning is very important before you actually go into the PI planning itself. So those were some of the questions that I asked her, and because she said no, no, no to all of this, there was really no need for me to keep going. All I did was, okay, next time, just make sure that before your team go for PI planning, during this period of innovation planning, that's the IP time, use this time to ensure that you are gathering information, they are introduced to the features, they're having conversation about this feature, they are breaking it down into user stories and even adding details. That way, if they go for PI planning itself, it becomes easier because they've already seen this already, and it becomes PI becomes smooth for them, or it goes smoothly. Okay, so Nanga Dumo said, when do you discuss the features with your team? Sprint planning or backlog refinement? Okay, Dr. Francis.
Okay, you discuss the future during PI planning. So by the time you're going to implement your iteration or implement your sprint, whatever you want to call it, you already have features that are broken down into stories. Now, if you work in Scrum environment, that's where you might be given features that you break them down into stories during backlog refinement. But it's advisable not to go into a sprint planning or an iteration planning with features because it's going to be so much time consuming. That only happen if you're not doing effective backlog refinement. Backlog refinement is very important. If your team is struggling so much with completing their work, emphasize on not just backlog planning where we go and we put point on stories and say, oh, this is a one, this is a five. We haven't real conversation if we really understand what it takes. Genuine open conversation. When you do that, what happens is that you cut down your time for sprint planning and you realize that everyone is in full understanding of what needs to be done. And at the same time, you realize your team performance is going to go up. Now, backlog refinement is also an opportunity to really kind of boost that collaboration with your team because it gives open discussion. And you as a Scrum Master, what is your role? You're just listening and trying to, by emotional intelligence, figure out what are knowledge gaps when they bring us some certain issue. How is my team engaging with all of these issues? That's where you kind of tend to start recommending some of the aspects that can help your team improve, right? So your biggest value as a Scrum Master is to observe and take questions and follow up on those questions on how you can help your team. Like Coach Jermaine said, a lot of Scrum Master come and ask questions, and you cannot help them because you don't have the baseline data. Now, the response of how well we can support our team is not how well we know Scrum. It's how well we understand their scenario. Oh, my team is struggling with the velocity. What can I do? What have you observed? Are you doing sprint planning regularly? Okay, is everyone participating? Or what type of approach are you using? What has been some of the stuff you've observed? That is where someone can be able to give you an effective advice on what exactly to do. But if you just come and throw a question randomly, it becomes very difficult for even your coach to help you. So don't be afraid to observe, gather, ask questions, right? And make sure that you really observing, do more observing, listening, and asking questions rather than cheap jumping in and giving solutions. Solutions, as most often, will have long-term effect. You can give an advice and then you realize, oh, this is not something I should be giving. Right. I want to give an example. I had someone, they were working in an environment, and based on that environment, they had to shut down all hours. Even when you're traveling, you have to shut down your hours. I was like, no, this is anti-Scrum. We cannot do that. We need to stick story points or so. But the rationale they were doing that is because the team was working on a government project. And for them to be able to pay out, they need to pay out every time they're investing. So the only way for the end user to track down what the team was actually put in place, they had to incorporate a system where they have to tax every hour, even traveling hours, they need to track that because they're working. And that's how they normally pay them. So you come in and say, oh no, this is not agile. What are you doing? You're breaking an entire system, which should not be. Is it agile? No. But then based on the culture of that company, that's what is working. So don't just get stuff and start changing stuff on the start. I also have a situation, someone got in, still within their first week of onboarding. The team was using hours for planning their work, and they said, oh no, story point is the best way to go. And then she got the team to buy in, which was good. But then she got a lot of resistance from the previous Scrum Master who was onboarding her. Number one, that Scrum Master has been running that team for about 4 years. So you get in less than 2 weeks, you're changing the entire system. And now you're going back to that same person for advice. Like, I didn't approve you change your story point, so there's no way I can help you. And then person like, oh, I'm very frustrated. This person would not respond to me because I'm bringing a better system in place. And I spoke to my agile coach. My agile coach wouldn't help. Like, no, you're bringing disruption, right? There's a way in which you communicate. And that is why there are levels of agreements you need to have before making changes. The fact that you see something is going wrong doesn't mean go in and change it. No, observe it, take down your note, have a conversation with management. This is what I've observed, and these are proper changes that may help us. Have a conversation with the lead, maybe your PO, right? Or the people that are supporting you. What is your idea? Now, if they said this is not the right time, let it lie down low. Become a stakeholder in the environment. When do you become a stakeholder? After about 4 or 5 months, no one is going to bother you. But be very patient in making quick decisions. Sometimes management also put you, oh, what do you think about this? Do you think we can change this? Do you think? And just imagine you're a visitor in someone's home and you change the entire home, even if you're the best designer, they're not gonna like you because you're simply telling them you don't know what you've been doing. Let me show you how it's supposed to be. You might be thinking you're doing good, but the way people think is very different. So let's take it slowly. Let's do the learning. When your manager put you to take, oh, we need to get everyone on camera by next week, right? You say, okay, team, everyone get on camera. You need to tell manager, look, we can do that, but this is the business implication. If we push these people to go as fast as we want, we may have that some of them start thinking about next option. That may lead us to start hiring a whole new people together, right? And this some of these things always happen also because with time management is so easy. I had a scenario, a Scrum Master joined a team, and they said, okay, look, we want everyone to start going on camera by next week. And he said, like, management want me to get everyone on camera. I said, okay, these are the same people they have not been able to get them on camera for more than 2 years, and they want you to do it within 2 weeks. That's not realistic, right? So, so just have a conversation with them and see how to sort that out. But that's reality we're facing in the field. But for you to be able to not buy into that is to understand that your goal is not to get in and change or to get in and making things work. Your goal is to partner with the people that are in the system, understand them, see what value you can leverage to make them have create a happy environment to work rather than you bringing changes. With this thinking, you realize that you will not have a problem working with any environment.
I agree with you. You might have all the great ideas you have in this world, but you come into an environment. That's why it's very important for you to. I mean, it's just easy. Listen, observe, ask questions, dig down, go to the root cause analysis. So I see that Anna said you were echoing, and when I saw that, I did mute myself. And Emeka equally said you were echoing, but I believe that they were able to hear you after I muted myself. So apologies for that inconvenience, everyone that is online right now in the comment section. So yes, I've equally had a situation where now it's like we are deviating from what is here. But to the question that Nanga asked, and Dr. Francis addressed that already, when do you discuss the features with your team, sprint planning or backlog refinement? Simple question here, we do it during backlog refinement. Remember, backlog refinement is the same thing like pre-planning, like when you're going in for PI. So you want to pre-plan before you actually go into sprint planning, because backlog is for future work, while sprint planning is for current work. So use backlog refinement to discuss features. Okay, and just to anchor on what Dr. Francis said, I've equally had experiences like that where someone will just join the team and they said, oh, it was same thing about story pointing. For some reason, I don't know why. You know, you just joined a team where you've been working before. And the idea the person brought in was, okay, we are equating this number of story points to hours. And that is what the organization didn't want to hear. So according by the person that came in, that person was a scrum master. According by them, oh, we have a great idea. I'm just going to help the team, because sometimes the team going blindly into estimation, not actually really, especially for a team that is just starting. Some people are very curious. They want to know, okay, what can I hold on to? What can I equate this story point to? You know, for me to fully know that, okay, this is how long it can actually take. But the goal is not to focus on how long. Again, you have a time box period. You work within a Scrum environment. Then that experience is they work in a Scrum environment. You have a time box period. You're focusing on, because story point is not just about how long it's going to take. Effort, complexity, how voluminous is the work. We are taking into account all of these different aspects. But that person failed to understand. They just came in, and for some reason, within it was less than 2 weeks actually. Things were just going south. Like the team kept they kept complaining. Various team members will reach out to their manager, some will reach out to me, the coach. Then I was a coach then in that organization, and I was in charge of that team. So when I got that feedback, because at that point before I left them, they had a scrum master in place, or when I gave them a just giving them, you know, some chance for them to kind of implement the muscle memory that if you know they've learned throughout planning and when I was observing them. So this person just came with a completely different idea and just made the team to start reasoning in a different direction. Then my goal was when I connected with this person. So one thing this particular Scrum Master experience was after doing that, the pushback that he got from the team members and the hatred with this kind of, things that you bring to the team, you will think that okay, they will just go ahead and like what you're bringing in, and they will just trust you. No, instead you're killing that trust. You want to first of all build a relationship with the team that you're going to be working with as a Scrum Master. So you coming in less than 2 weeks, you're already implementing a lot of stuff as if what they were doing before. You want to observe, get to the root cause analysis. You didn't even see anything in place that wasn't working, but you were just interested in bringing in your own ideas. It's not like their story pointing was not working. It was working great. But you just came in and say, you know what, team, there's a way you can equate this story point to these hours. Agile is telling us to move away from absolute measurement, and you're trying to bring it back. Like, what are you really trying to teach the team? So to an extent, things did not really go well for him, and for some reason he just had to resign because the pushback from team members was just too much. Like sometimes when he would even speak, they wouldn't even want to hear from him. Like he just came in, things have been going well, we just got transitioned, we are learning this thing great, we are putting in our best, and now that you just came in, you've just diverted the whole idea, and the information you're even preaching or what you're telling us to do, it's not even going to work. That is not what the organization even wants in the first place. And that is not Agile. Like, where do you even come from? So sometimes we need to be very careful. Yes, we are the SME, but don't just go about implementing, your thoughts into a space that you join. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to support you. You're going to be alone. And once the team, keep resisting all this, you're not going to like the environment, and you'll probably be forced to leave. So, okay, that was my experience there. So Dr. Francis is actually a YouTuber. His name is Safe Scrum Master Chat Room. He does amazing content. He uploads content on a daily, like in a week, he can upload maybe 5 or 6 or 7. He uploads it regularly. Unlike myself, let me say it that way. I've not been consistent, and that is the truth. But please make sure you subscribe to his channel. Please make sure you subscribe to his channel. The name is Safe Scrum Master Chat Room. He's my brother. He's my to-go person. Whenever I have any challenge, I just run to him, especially when it comes to YouTube. So he has been super helpful. He's a business agile coach. So Dr. Francis, I really appreciate you for your time.
Well, thank you very much, Coach.
Coach.
This has
It
been
has
a
been a
super
super
powerful
powerful
conversation.
conversation.
For anyone
For
that did
anyone
not
that
join
did
in
not
on
join in
time,
on
I'm going
time,
to
I'm going to
advise you to go
advise you to
back,
go,
especially if you're having
if you're having
challenge with
challenge
understanding PI
in
planning.
PI planning.
So
So
we're looking
we're
forward
looking
for
forward
many
for
more
many more
collaboration.
collaboration.
And please leave your
If your
comments. We'll
comments would
definitely answer
definitely
them,
answer
even
them
if we're
even if
offline.
offline. Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this person said you have to be able to read the room. That is true. And same thing goes for interviews. You go into an interview, you see people's facial expression, body language, read the room. If you're saying things that doesn't make sense, they are definitely gonna make you to understand that yes, this is not right. Or maybe the way you address them, they are probably gonna say something. Echoing again. Okay. So I needed to. Okay. So if there's anything you're saying that doesn't align with, what they believe in or what they're expecting, their body language will be able to communicate that to you. So be able to just be conscious, read the room as much as you need to. So thank you again so very much. I really appreciate you all that joined and that asked questions in the comment section. Maybe we're going to be going live again in the future, but we don't know the exact date. Maybe the next time will be on Dr. Francis' platform. So I look forward to seeing you all again there. And again, use the comment section for any questions that you might have. Thank you all so very much, and do have a lovely day.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.